So what's worse than being blind? Having sight, but no vision. Hello, and welcome to Time Out with PC. I'm so glad you joined me today, and I've got a really interesting subject, and this might be important to you. It's called bringing out the best in others. That's a major life skill. So I've been studying the life of Helen Keller. She has quite an amazing story, but we're going to use her story as an example of how we can overcome obstacles no matter what they are, and actually be a part of contributing to bringing out the best in other people, no matter what they're dealing with. So we're going to reflect about this story. Here's a little background information. Now, Helen was totally deaf and blind by the time she was 19 months old. So her parents made a decision to go ahead and find someone, this person, her name was Anne Sullivan, be her tutor, to be her mentor. And they didn't even do this until she was 6 years old. Now, Anne was partially blind herself, but the story is so wonderful because they were together for 49 years. And it was an amazing story of devotion and nurturing and education that marked their relationship. So in spite of her disabilities, listen to some of these accomplishments. Helen Keller actually graduated from Radford College, which was associated with Oxford. Imagine that, college graduate. She authored 14 books, and she made more than 475 speeches and wrote essays along with her speeches. She traveled to 39 countries and went to over 5 continents, working on advocating for the disabled. So this is, she read the Bible every day through Braille. So she learned how to read through Braille. Can you imagine the process of taking someone who's living basically in the dark and bringing all of this into her life? So hopefully we can learn today about how we can help this younger generation, yourself and the generation, how to navigate this discontent and self-gratification that we see everywhere. So here's a few quotes that Helen made that I think are pretty significant. And it's the one I said at the very beginning: the only thing worse than being blind is having sight with no vision. That was her statement. Here's another quote: alone we can do so little, but together we can do so much. Wow, I love that. And here's something: although the world is full of suffering, it's also full of the overcoming of it. So in other words, you might be suffering, you might have challenges, you might even have disabilities, but there's a way to overcome it. I think there's a way to overcome everything with the help of the Lord. Here's another statement she made: self-pity is our worst enemy if we yield to it. We can never do anything wise in the world. Now, I know for personal experience that if something happens to me, my heart is hurt, I just sort of go into a hole, I want to shut everything off, and I'm not getting anything done of any value for myself or anybody else. So self-pity is a dead-end street, okay? And here's one other statement: a happy life consists not in the absence of, but in the mastery of hardships. So not in the absence of hardships, but in the mastery of hardships. So there's a way out for all of us, and you can take that to the bank. So her tutoring was an amazing example of how we can bring out the best in another person. So here are a few principles that can guide us to be more helpful to those who are around us. Number one, be others-minded. Yeah, think about the other person. We can become so overly self-conscious and self-absorbed. We saw that after the fall of Adam. So, God asked Adam a question. He said, And this is how he responded. He said, where are you, Adam? Here's his answer. I heard you walking in the garden, so I hid. I was afraid because I was naked. So in that one sentence, Adam said the word I 4 times. Wow. So Jesus is trying to teach us a new way of relating. Remember, we're bringing out the best in others. So in Luke, he said, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. A great truth. Here's another one from 1 Corinthians. I don't just do what is best for me. I do what is best for others so that they may be saved. Now, here's a different translation of that same verse. Says, just as I please all men in all things, not seeking my own profit, but the profit of many so they may be saved. Wow, that would certainly bring out the best in others. So here's one more. Be humble. Thinking of others is better than yourselves. Don't look out only for your own interests, but take an interest in others too. That's in Philippians 2, so you can look that up. So not that we show an interest in other people for our own advantage. Dale Carnegie had it right when he said, you can make more friends in 2 months by becoming interested in them than you can in 2 years by trying to get them interested in you. So that's a very good fact. Now, here's another point. Be curious. Now, here's some factoids for you. In the Bible, there's approximately 3,294 questions. Remember, we're talking about being curious as a way of bringing out the best in others. So, God asked Job 77 questions in 2 chapters. In the Gospel, Jesus asked 307 questions. And in Romans, Paul asked 47 questions just in the book of Romans alone. So many of these questions show a genuine interest in others. So at times, like in Genesis 3:19, when God asked Adam, where are you? It wasn't because he didn't know where he was. It was because he was trying to engage him and bring him in closer. So remember, when the teacher asks the questions, what is 2 plus 2? It doesn't mean the teacher doesn't know the answer. They're trying to get them to engage. And so I love a statement I heard a while back. It said, when God's asked a question, he's not looking for information. He already knows. He's asking a question because he wants us to interact with him. So Paul was curious about how things were going in the other churches that he had set up and ministered to, so he asked questions. He genuinely cared. And that shows that we genuinely care about others when we are, curious and ask about their well-being and how things are going with them. So I think that's so important. Paul helped high-ranking officials and even a slave named Onesimus. He cared, he lifted people up like Titus and Timothy. So we're seeing some great examples we've got in the Bible and in real life about how we can bring out the best in others. So when you're building bridges with your relationships with other people that you meet, the most powerful words you can speak are, tell me about yourself, showing that you really, really care. Now, the third point is in our way of bringing out the best in others is to be kind. That's an amazing, one of the simplest but most powerful ways that we can take us to get along with people is simply by being kind to other people. Here's a quote. Kindness makes a person attractive. If you would win the world, melt it, don't hammer it. Right? Don't use the hammer, All right. And here's one I really like from Billy Graham. It says, often the only thing a child can remember about an adult in later life is when they're grown is whether or not that person was kind. So here's our summary. If we can all be others-minded, escaping the pull of selfishness, if we can be curious, in a healthy way because we really genuinely care about people. And if we can be kind, because the love of God has been shed and abroad in our hearts, and because love is kind, then we'll go a long way to bringing out the best in others. So, have you got vision to go along with your sight? Hey, thank you for joining me today on Time Out, and I just want to ask you to do me a favor. Would you please subscribe, like, or share this podcast with others so we can spread the word?